It starts with a power outage. 3 days, an ice storm takes down the lines across the county and you sit in a dark house eating cereal from the box because everything in the refrigerator has gone bad and you have nothing stored and no plan and no way to cook anything and your phone is at 11% and dropping. Your neighbor knocks on your door on the second night with a candle and a can of soup and you feel something you are not used to feeling. Helpless, dependent, caught completely unprepared by something that wasn't even a real disaster. The power comes back on day 3. You go to the grocery store, you buy 2 weeks of canned goods and a case of water and a flashlight with extra batteries and you feel better. You feel like you have done something reasonable, you put it all in a closet and you go back to your life. That would have been the end of it. For most people, that is the end of it. For you, it isn't. The canned goods sit in the closet and you think about them. You think about the 3 days and what would have happened if it had been 6. What would have happened if the grid had gone down across the whole state instead of just your county? What would have happened if the stores had run out before the power came back, which almost happened, which you read about afterward? The shelves in your area were 2 days from empty when the trucks finally got through. 2 days, that is the margin. 2 days between a manageable inconvenience and something that doesn't have a clean name. You start reading. Not Doomsday forums, not survivalist message boards, not yet. You start with FEMA guidelines. Boring government documents about emergency preparedness that recommend 2 weeks of supplies per household. 2 weeks. That is the official recommendation of the federal agency responsible for disaster response. You have 3 days in a closet. You are behind the government's own baseline. This feels like a math problem. You are good at math problems. You extend the supplies to 1 month, then 6 weeks. You buy a water filtration system, a good one, not a camping filter, but a gravity-fed unit that can process 50 gallons a day from any fresh water source. It costs $400 and you do not think of it as a luxury. You think of it as insurance. You have car insurance. You have health insurance. This is the same category of thing. You tell yourself that and you believe it because at this stage it is true. The research expands the way research expands when you are the kind of person who follows a thread to its end. You read about grid vulnerabilities. The American power grid is 3 interconnected systems and all 3 are aging and all 3 have single points of failure that the people who run them have been aware of for decades and have not fixed because fixing them costs money that the people who would have to spend it have not been willing to spend. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is in the congressional record. You read the congressional record, you read the infrastructure reports. You read the postmortems on previous grid failures and the projections for future ones and the math on what a sustained outage of more than 30 days would do to supply chains, to hospitals, to water treatment facilities that run on electric pumps. The math is not good. You buy a generator, then a solar array for the house with a battery bank that can run essential systems for 4 days without sun. You buy a chest freezer and fill it, and then you buy a second one and fill that too. You learn to can. Not the casual summer project kind of canning. The systematic kind, cases of vegetables and proteins put up with a pressure canner that you run every weekend through the harvest season. Labeled and dated and rotated on a schedule you keep in a spreadsheet that tracks calories per person per day against your target reserve window. Your target reserve window is 1 year. You hit it in 14 months. You do not stop at 14 months. The window extends. A year becomes 18 months. 18 months becomes 2 years because 2 years is the number that appears most often in the serious literature as a threshold beyond which a collapse scenario either stabilizes or doesn't. And if it doesn't, then you need a different plan entirely, and a different plan is its own project that you begin running in parallel. You add a ham radio setup. You get your license, the real one, the amateur radio operator's license that requires an exam, and a call sign registered with the FCC. You learn to operate it. You make contacts across the region. You build a communications web that does not depend on cell infrastructure or internet infrastructure or any infrastructure at all beyond a 12-volt battery and an antenna you built yourself from plans in a reference book published in 1987 that you found at an estate sale for $4. This is the part where you are still reasonable. Looking back later, you will be able to identify this as the high watermark of the reasonable phase, though you will not think of it as a phase at the time. At the time, you think of it as completion. You have built something real and functional, and the building of it has made you better at a dozen related skills. You can start a fire 3 different ways. You can dress a wound properly. You can navigate without a phone. You can grow food in the raised beds you put in the backyard and preserve what you grow and calculate how much of it you need to get through a winter and plant accordingly next spring. You feel capable in a way that is different from how most people feel capable. Then you find the forums. You join one because you have a specific question about long-term seed storage and someone on a gardening board links you to it. The question gets answered well and thoroughly. The community is knowledgeable in the specific way that people who have spent years developing a skill set become knowledgeable. You stay, you read, you learn things you didn't know you needed to know, and some of them are genuinely useful and some of them are something else, and at first you cannot tell the difference. The vocabulary shifts around you gradually. The framing shifts. Preparedness becomes a different word in this space. In the FEMA documents, it means 2 weeks of supplies and an evacuation plan. In this space, it means something larger and more urgent and more specifically threatening. The threats have names and timelines. Some of them are plausible. Some of them are elaborately constructed and internally consistent and wrong in ways that take real effort to identify. You begin to find it difficult to identify them. You have been reading for long enough that the logic of this world has become the baseline and the outside world has started to look like the thing that needs explaining. You do not notice this happening. That is how it happens. A neighbor from your old street calls to catch up. You talk for 20 minutes and somewhere in the middle of it, he mentions a news story about supply chain disruptions, and you spend the next 8 minutes explaining the grid, vulnerability data, and the congressional record and the infrastructure failure projections, and when you finish, there is a silence on the line that lasts long enough to be its own answer. He says he should let you go. You tell him to look into a water filtration system. He says, sure, yeah, definitely. He does not call again. You move, not far, 40 minutes outside the city to a property with 12 acres, a well, a wood line, and a south-facing slope where you put the expanded solar array. You tell people it's a lifestyle choice, quieter, more space, better for the garden. All of that is true. The other reason, the primary reason, is that 40 minutes puts you outside the blast radius projections for a strike on the city center and outside the initial refugee dispersal pattern for a grid-down population movement scenario. You have maps. You have modeled the movement patterns using census data and road network analysis, and you know where the pressure points are, and your property is not near any of them. You do not tell people the other reason. You build the shelter under the barn, concrete reinforced, 8 inches of ceiling, ventilation system with HEPA filtration, a hand pump well tap that bypasses the electric pump, enough food and water and medical supplies for 4 people for 2 years. You wire it for solar, you stock it with reference books, physical ones, because in the scenarios you are preparing for, digital information is unavailable. You have manuals for every system, electrical, mechanical, medical, agricultural. Everything needed to operate self-sufficiently is in that room in physical form. You have spent $340,000 building something you hope you never use. You tell yourself this is the same category as insurance. The people in your life ask questions you answer briefly. Your sister visits the property once, looks at the raised beds and the barn and the solar array, and asks if you are okay. You tell her you have never been more okay. You show her the garden. You do not show her the barn. She drives back to the city and calls you the following week, and the conversation is careful in the way conversations become careful when someone is worried and does not know how to say it. You tell her not to worry. You do not call her the week after. The community you have found online becomes the community you have. You attend a regional meetup, 40 people in a rural event space, knowledgeable and serious, and some of them frightened in ways that have calcified into certainty. You trade information, you trade contacts. A man in a field jacket gives you the number of a supplier for medical grade antibiotics, the kind that do not require prescription if you know where to order them from. You order 6 courses of 4 different types and add them to the medical inventory with the dosing charts you have printed and laminated. A woman who runs a homestead 3 counties over connects you to a network of like-minded properties. Mutual aid, she calls it. You will know these people if something happens. You will know where to go and who will. I'll let you in. You feel less alone than you have in 2 years. You do not examine how long it has been since you felt less alone because of someone who was not part of this. The trigger is an article, not a real emergency. An article, a legitimate news piece about a cyber attack on a water treatment facility in a mid-sized city, a real attack, real damage, the kind of infrastructure vulnerability you have been reading about for 3 years, and now here it is in a mainstream publication. Your body responds before your brain does. Heart rate, the specific alertness that the forums taught you to recognize as readiness. You go to the shelter, you run the checklist. Everything is in order. Everything has always been in order. You sit in the shelter at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday with the ventilation humming and the lighting on battery and the 2 years of food on the shelves and the reference books and the laminated charts, and you are completely prepared for almost anything. Your phone has 4 messages. Your sister, a friend from the city you have not responded to in 6 weeks, a neighbor who wants to know if you're coming to the county extension meeting about water rights, which is actually relevant to your situation. Devon from the online network about the next meetup. You look at the messages for a while. You built all of this to protect your life. Somewhere in the building of it, without a specific moment you can point to, the building became the life. The preparation replaced the thing it was meant to preserve. You are ready for the end of the world in a room under a barn on a Tuesday night, and the world has not ended, and you are completely alone, and the checklist is perfect, and the supplies are rotated, and the math is right, and something that has no name and is not in any of the reference books is wrong in a way that no amount of storage or planning or architecture is designed to fix. You are prepared for everything. You did not prepare for this.